One, two, 1, 2, need my attitude. 3, 4, 3, 4, check my latitude. Ooh, I like that. Ooh, I like that.
Hello, good morning, all of that fun stuff. How we doing?
We're doing great. And just so everybody knows, there is a backup plan if ever I don't show up. Brian is going to come on here and tell you guys all the love stories of falling in love during disasters. And it's a really sweet story. So sometime I'm going to have to fake sick so you guys can get that story.
Oh, good Lord. And those of you who don't know, Brian is my partner in life. And yes, we met in a disaster. That's a hurricane tattoo. He has one too. So yeah, there's a story around that. I don't know if it's a half-hour long story, but we'll see. I feel like by Wednesday every week, I've lived like a whole week. Like, I think weeks need to just be 3 days. But unfortunately,
I could do a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday week.
Nobody lets me do that. So I don't know. But part of it is I think I'd feel lazy. Like this weekend, we were productive and lazy in equal amounts.
Mm-hmm.
And every time like we sat there, like by the time the second episode of a show started, I'm just like, we should get up and do something. It's like we're being lazy. And it's like, no, sometimes you got to be lazy, right?
I think that it's good when you can take that break and take that step of like, whew, I did this, right?
Mhm.
And there is a difference. I mean, a lot lately, I have been very mentally checked out. And so that is definitely I've gone too far on the, sorry,
Bless
I
you.
forgot to mute.
All
I've
right.
definitely gone too far on the like, quote unquote, lazy or like mentally needing a break. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
And
and I
then,
think I want to clarify really quick. Lazy is when you have like things to do and you're purposely not doing them to sit on the couch and watch TV or do whatever is not doing that. But to take a break, like to take, a break or a night off or a whatever, I think those are two different things. I actually felt lazy this weekend, but I went on a cruise a week and a half ago or whatever, and I didn't feel lazy on the cruise. Taking a break is fine. I just want to clarify the difference in my head of lazy and,
no, I love it. And I think that's why we work well together because there is that idea of supporting people where they're at and understanding that we're hard on ourselves, right? That sometimes we're our worst critic in those spaces. So I
yeah.
appreciate that. And speaking of being our worst critic, we came up with a good topic today.
Yeah.
And the topic is kind of around how people approach work, how people approach business, how people approach leadership. And the basis of this is that there are people who have the theory of I go into work and I'm going to get paid the same whether it gets done or not. And there's people who go into work who go in and they work like they own it. They make sure that everything is done right. They make sure that if somebody comes in, they're proud to showcase where they're at, right? And then we have people who are like, this is what I'm getting paid for. This is what I'm going to do. And then you have people who are kind of in between a little bit of all of that. But there are those kind of three different tiers. There's the I just show up, I collect my paycheck, I do as much as I can to keep the job. There's the people who do what they're getting paid to do. They don't really vary from that. And I'm sure there's times that they step up if they need to, but for the most part, it's this is my checklist, I did it. And then there's people who definitely go above and beyond inside of that. And what we wanted to kind of talk about today was one, as you know, we all know how those employees function. We've all seen them, we've all been in that space. But when you're the leadership part of that, right? How are you approaching that? How are you dealing with that? And then also as a business owner, those three hats, if you have people who are working with you as an entrepreneur, normally you're the only entrepreneur. So you
Yeah.
can't show up doing what gets paid, because in order to collect that paycheck, you need to do the things that bring in the customers. If you're showing up with just your checklist, you're not flexible, you're not moving with the business. And then when you're doing all inclusive, right? Sometimes there's a lot of burnout in that. So we wanted to kind of just touch base on what does that look like from the management point of view, from the ownership point of view. So yeah, I think that's a good lead in, right, Sarah?
I think so. And I think that I want to clarify before I give my example of this situation that we're talking about. We need, okay, with the exception of the person not doing their job at all, we need the people that just come and do their job, right? You come, you do your exact job from 8 to 5 or whatever your timeline is, and you are good at doing that job. You don't go above and beyond, because your above and beyond is for your kids, for your family, for your above and beyond goes somewhere else. And we need those people in the business world, right? Not everybody is going to a job with the assumption that I'm going to be the manager or the CEO of this business someday. Nope. Okay, I worked at Wendy's for 6 years. There was I never wanted to be a manager or a CEO or an owner of a Wendy's, right? I went and did my job. I was good at it. I stayed there for 6 years, right? So I want to clarify that, right? And then we need the people that go above and beyond, right? The people that say, okay, I'm good with here, but I want to be there. And I'm going to do a little bit above and beyond or a lot above and beyond to get there. So I just want to clarify that the people that they're above and beyond go somewhere else. But Brittany and I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs where their above and beyond goes everything into that business. And when we start applying that thought process to other industries, I guess I'll go with. And so my example that I want to start with is this person that I used to work with that she did a lot of communications and graphic design. And at one point in time, we started talking about, like, not her and I, the whole company, what are you actually doing on a week-to-week basis, right? So we started doing these week check-ins, like once a week check-ins with everyone, like, what are you working on? So everybody in the company, it was a very small company, knew what we were all working on. And every one of them except for her came with like this list of like 10 things they're working on, projects, things ongoing, current, whatever. She came with a list of 2 things. Well, this is what I'm working on this week. I don't know what I'm working on next week. We're kind of like, we didn't realize this, but this might be why you're going slow, right? So yeah, her thing was she would do 2 main things a week and then whatever was thrown at her. And I'm like, that is not a plan, right? And so leadership had to bring her in and talk to her about like planning her schedule and building things out and making a plan, because she was communications. And we're like, oh, this is why things always seemed like an emergency when they happened. Now, back to what did leadership do? Leadership did not put her on a performance improvement plan. Mm-hmm. They just let that fester and fester and fester until she ended up quitting.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And I think that's where that list comes in. When you hire, there is an expectation list, right? Mm-hmm. So no matter what position or what part of a job or a company you work for, there's an expectation of, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, these are the things that are expected. And if you can't check that checklist off, then you're not accomplishing what needs to be accomplished, or we made it too difficult. And maybe you need a second helper. I've worked plenty of jobs where I told them, hey, the job requirement for my position requires 2 people. And that would allow us, if we had 2 people, it would allow us to kind of do a little bit more in these areas that we're not doing very well in.
Mhm.
And so when you're able to look at, okay, this is the position, this is what we expect you to do, let's talk about how we can support you in getting that accomplished. That's huge. But also there's people who come into that position and they're like, oh, you gave me this checklist, but you're not really checking to make sure that I did some of these things.
That's it.
Therefore,
For
I'm
years
going to
and
get paid
years,
the
this
same.
person, exactly. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then their idea is I get paid the same, and so then they work inside of I just show up because you're not checking me, you're not watching me.
Yeah. And that leads to the leaders, and I've written a few blogs on this, the leaders that have to turn to micromanagement. Because when you have enough employees, especially in bigger companies, where you have enough employees that come through that are doing that, right? I'm doing enough to skate by, I'm doing enough, then it turns into a micromanagement huge problem. And that happened at a place I worked right around COVID. Hey, Sophia. And what happened is not the current CEO, was the previous one. He got so flustered that nobody was doing what he thought they should be doing. We ended up having to do daily reports on what we accomplished that day. Talk about micromanagement. It was just like, are you flipping kidding me? Now, he ended up being let go for a variety of other reasons, but that was not one of them, ironically. But yeah, that's what it turns into, right? And that's what I fear when one employee kind of gets away with something like this and there's no ramification, there's no anything, and that kind of festers, and other people are like, well, if they can get away with it, I could get away with it.
Right. Well, and there's also the mentality of when you walk into work and something's not accomplished and you walk in time and time again continuously trying to accomplish that thing, right? Like you're like,
Mhm.
I come in every time, this is not yes, it's a part of something that I do, but it would be less hard if somebody had done it before me, right? And so when you look at that space of what does it look like to be team, right? How does that checklist affect the rest of the team? And if let's go back to the Wendy's job, right? If the shift before you didn't clean the griddle, then when you come in, you have to clean the griddle, then you're gonna have to clean it mid-shift, then you're gonna have to clean it at the end of your shift, and probably no matter what, you're gonna have to do some extra cleaning at the very beginning because that first clean probably didn't get done the 2 times during the shift it was supposed to.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a very difficult and tiresome situation for the people around who are now picking up that extra weight.
Mhm.
I remember I worked for a company and I organized everything inside of it. And I had a few people say, oh, I did that when I started. You're just wasting your energy. Well, if you did it when you started and the employees at that time didn't keep up with that, and now I'm here, there's 2 of us to do this, right? There's more of us that are going to keep this going. And when you can look at the idea of, okay, this is what is established and this is how
Yeah.
we keep it established, and support each other, that's what you really want to look at.
Yes. Yes. And I think it needs to come from leadership top down, right?
Mhm.
Because my experiences have been where a lot of things are happening down here. You can't see my hands. A lot of things are happening here, and then middle management might know about it, but they're thinking, oh, I don't want to sound like I can't handle my people,
Mm.
right? So then leadership actually never knows truly what's going on until something really stupid happens, right? A big client is, left by the wayside, a purchase isn't made in time, right? When something big happens, then leadership is like, well, what happened? And then management's like, well, we knew about it for 6 months, but we were scared to tell you. And I think there's a level there that leadership, without micromanaging, needs to get themselves into the ranks, for lack of better definitions. And I still remember, this was a long time ago. I was doing an event at the Battleship, New Jersey, and I was with an organization at the time, and the CEO was coming to this event. There were a lot of people there, staff that had never met the CEO at that time. And so, because we were a nationwide organization, and he was out of DC and whatever. So I saw him walking up towards the event area, and I just yelled. I'm like, oh, heck no. I didn't even say hi. I'm like, heck no, you're not walking in here without grabbing boxes off the truck. Right. And I yelled this, and he just laughed and went and grabbed boxes off the truck, right? Because it's all hands on deck. And then probably 20 minutes later, I'm introducing him, and this one girl's like, you yelled at the CEO? And I'm like, no, I yelled at the CEO. Like, I called to him. I wasn't yelling at him, and he can carry a box just as well as the rest of us can. Yeah. Right? He's not dressed for the event yet. And so he was very much in the ranks, and for lack of better terms, right? Like, he didn't want to sit on a pedestal. And so I think leaders need to understand that, right? That you don't want to be on a pedestal, you want to be in the ranks, but you can't be their friend.
Yeah.
Like, those are two different things.
That's like when you're working on like when we talk about the Wendy's or any other things, right? If you're a manager and you're not willing to clean a bathroom, then how would you expect everybody else to clean a bathroom, right?
Correct.
If you're not willing to do the nitty-gritties with everybody, or nepotism, right? Well, you just got that job because you knew the person and you haven't worked up through the company. So yeah, there's sometimes nepotism is like true nepotism, and sometimes it's, well, actually they did a lot of the work before they got here, and we gave them that job like we would any outside hire. But people are still going to look at it in that position of, well, you knew somebody, right? And they forget that knowledge. And so it turns into that space. But also, I think, Sarah, like you're talking about, if you're not willing to work the load across the board, right? And you're just wanting to call down the ranks, you're going to get into that position of, I just showed up to get my check.
Yes. And that ends up a really big problem when people just show up to get a check and they have no investment.
And that's how we lose employees. That's how we lose, and sometimes those people will walk away because they get bypassed. They do the minimum, and as other people are getting hired that are doing a little bit more, they start to see that other people are getting promotions. And the strange part about it is you would think that, hey, I'm seeing these other people working more and doing more, so they're getting promotions, so I'm going to take that on myself, but they don't. And I think in that position too, it's also management's job to reach out and say, hey, we notice that you're sitting at the level that you're sitting at. And here, what are the things that we can do to give you a plan to help you move forward, right? We don't want people sitting stagnant in our businesses. We want to make if our business can grow, and the best way for it to grow is with the staff inside it, right?
No, and I get that. I do 100%. I want people to grow if they want to grow. Yep. Right. But I do want to say, and I'm going to use, like, say a third grade teacher as an example, right? A third grade teacher, I want that third grade teacher to grow in their knowledge and of themselves and all of that. I don't need them to be whatever third grade teacher 2.0 that doesn't even exist, right? Like, I don't want every third grade teacher to turn into a principal, which is like their next level, right? So there are jobs, there are people who want to stay in that role and just get better in that role, right?
Yep.
Be the best cashier you can be the best, whatever, like, and there's certain roles that you have, like, you can just be the best in the world at that role. Not everybody wants that. And that's where the conversations happen, right? A leader goes to somebody and says, hey, I see that you are stagnant, right? Do you like where you are? Are you enjoying this? And you might get the no, but you might get the yes. My job is because, I just want to get out of the house and I like to be here and engage with the public. I don't want to be a manager. I don't want to be a shift supervisor or whatever my next step happens to be. Right. And so I think it's all about communication. I think everything we've just talked about for 20 minutes and 32 seconds has been, you need to communicate up and down the ranks of your staff.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of, inside of that conversation that you were just talking about, sometimes people think, well, in order for me to get a pay raise, I have to go up in ranks, right?
Yeah.
And here's a good question, Sarah. If you have somebody who has been with your company for a year and they are doing their checklist, their daily checklist, right? They're making sure that that checklist is done. It's done better than it normally, right? It's done the best that it can be done. It's consistent. They show up every day.
Mhm.
I think that they're at some point inside of the big corporations and the things like that, we're like, oh, well, they're just a teller, so they're going to cap out at that 14. Well, no, they're a teller that's been here for a year. They're a teller that's been here and shown up and doing things. And I think that there is a way where we can give some leeway for a raise for somebody who is sitting stagnant, but yet accomplishing that position and holding it, right?
And
Because you
they're doing their best at that position.
yeah.
Right. And I agree with you. I don't know how tellers work. I've never actually worked as a teller or know how that, but most
I
of the
think
jobs,
when I was saying teller, I was just meaning like cashier or,
sure.
whichever.
But I do know that most larger corporations, some smaller ones probably can't do this, but there's a level of, like a 2 to 5% raise every year. And if you're just doing your job and you're doing it great and you're not going above and beyond in any way, shape, or form, you're just coming in, doing your job, going home, not causing problems, yay, then you get that 2 to 3% raise, right? That cost of living raise, for lack of better terms. And then if you go above and beyond, then you get that 4 or 5% or even more in some organizations. So I think that at least all the organizations I have worked for have worked a little bit like that. And I can't. I know the Red Cross did. I don't know what their percentages were, and I know that the military nonprofits I worked for did. The ones before that, that's been too long. I don't remember what they did. They
Yeah,
probably
I'm kind of thinking though in that space of, and this is me kind of being in on the side of like minimum wage, right? We know that that is just right now currently all the things. We normally don't talk politics, but that little bit of a raise, right, sometimes isn't a dollar is a huge raise. A dollar or $1.50, right? That's helping a little bit more than a little bit than change, right?
yes.
But in my what I was trying to think, hold on. I had it and then I lost it. So where I was going with that though was that I lost it, Sarah. Where was I going with it?
You were talking about politics and how a small raise, that like the percentage raise, isn't as helpful as the dollar raise.
Right, as a dollar would be. And here's the thing, that's what I was gonna say. To hire somebody to replace that person because they're not getting paid to stay will cost you more money, and the likelihood that they have the same loyalty is, uh, it's it's a roll of the dice, right? So I think that there's some places where we're not thinking about what does it actually cost to just give them a little bit more of a raise to make sure that they're staying,
Mhm.
right? As opposed to, well, now we have to hire somebody new. So that's what I was kind of thinking was,
So 100%, and I'm not going to get political, but I'm going to talk about something, and then I'll bring it back to your point, because I think it makes sense. So yesterday, in Illinois, and I don't know if this is every state, I don't know, but yesterday was a primary vote here for the governor. Okay, along with some other roles. So my youngest turned 18, so his dad took him to vote for the first time. Okay. And when he was leaving the voting booth, they were walking to the car. He was telling his dad about how he thought it was weird that he voted because he didn't really know anybody on the ballot. Does that, I mean, other than our current governor? I mean, he's not an idiot, but you know, there's a lot of like senators and judges and things on there that he's like, I've never heard of these people before in my life. He goes, so I'm probably just going to vote for the president going forward. Right. And it led my partner and I to have a conversation this morning about how no one really pays attention to politics until it impacts them, right? So at some point, Connor's going to be like, there's not enough bus routes, or, you know, schools need better funding or whatever. And then he's going to care about his senator. Correct. And so when you were talking about the loyalty thing and the percentage of raise and all of that, people need to, and this is my lead in with that, is people need to advocate for themselves, right? So if you feel like you have all this loyalty and you are not getting the raise that you deserve, right? Don't just threaten to leave. Don't just be like, I'm threatening to leave. You know, go up the chain a couple levels and ask why, right? If you're not getting the answer at your regular, like your immediate manager level, go to the divisional or the district manager, ask the questions. You're never going to, shouldn't say fired. Yeah, I shouldn't say never. 95% of the time, you're not going to get fired just for asking the question. Okay. Now, if they fire you for asking the question, you don't flip and want to work there anyways. Go
yeah,
find another
exactly.
job, right?
And I think that's huge. You have to advocate.
Yes, but you actually have to have that passion to advocate, right? So like Connor, the 18-year-old, sorry, he isn't interested in voting right now because there's no incentive, right? He doesn't know anybody. He's 18. He cares about what's going on in the world, but he doesn't see how his vote matters for that, right? And the same thing in a job, though. If you don't have the passion enough to ask the question and you just want to complain about it in the, you know, staff lunchroom, you're never going to succeed. You know what I'm saying? You need to stop with the complaining in the staff lunchroom on break and actually do something and talk to the right people.
Correct. And I remember when my kid was ready to vote, I had a mail-in ballot, and we went through every single person
Oh, yeah.
that was on the ballot, and we like researched each of them together and looked at that, you know, and really like as a whole, like who is it that you want to vote for? What do you see? What do you not see?
Yeah.
And I think that is one of those things, like when you go in person to vote, sometimes that preparation isn't really there. Now, granted, you can always look at who's going to be on the ballot, right? You can always look it up online, you can do those things, but we're not setting that precedence for that self-advocation very often, right? We're not
Right.
setting that, you know, we're not setting those precedences for people to understand how to stand up for themselves or how to build that smaller impact on, like, you can impact your life by reaching out to the people who are 8 degrees away from you, right? 6 degrees away from you. So yeah, I think that's huge.
Yes. And I think it's starting with having those conversations with your 18-year-old who is now not 18, and my 18-year-old, starting those conversations early so that they know, okay, not only does, you know, voting matter, right, but also advocating for yourself matters in your company. Learning how to give your opinion without acting like a ASS, right? I don't know if we're supposed to swear
You
on
can say
here.
yes. We're
I think
fine.
we can. It's a donkey, right? But you get my point. Like, so because a lot of times kids, like, they're just like, bleh, right? And there's a more eloquent way to do that. But if we teach that to our kids, then we're changing things for the next generation of the workforce.
Right. It's a different conversation if I say, well, you know what, every time I come into my shift, this isn't done and I'm really exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, when I come to work, I have noticed that I really have to double up my efforts in this section, and I'm not sure really how we can work together to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's a difference in those two attitudes.
Yep. Exactly. Don't come with the anger or whatever that comes with it. Whatever emotion you have, take the emotion out of it and try to have that conversation.
And present a resolution. You know, maybe you have an idea, or say, I don't have one. I don't have a resolution, but this is what I see is not working very well.
And I know I've tried to stay a little unpolitical, and I don't think this is political, but whoever is watching this, and right now it is only Sophia, and I don't say only, but hopefully others watch it. But our schools, we keep saying our schools aren't teaching these things. Technically, our schools never taught these things, and our schools don't have time to teach some of these things, which means you as a parent, you as a grandparent, you as a community member need to teach the kids in your purview on how to do these things. How to stand up for themselves and advocate in the right way, how to not turn out to be a Karen that gets recorded on YouTube. Yay.
And also, Sarah, why aren't we advocating for that to be part of the curriculum for the kids who don't have access to people who can help?
It should. But I am not going to blame school districts.
No, I know. I'm just
right
saying,
now.
like, as far as advocating, we as a community can advocate as well. So
yes. If you want something to add to your curriculum, this is what voting is, right? Voting for a new superintendent of schools. That's usually a vote in most areas. So if you don't like what your schools are doing, make an appointment with the superintendent. If you don't like him or her, vote for a new one.
Yeah. Guys, we're at 30 minutes.
32
and 11 seconds. But you guys are on the Keystone Network. Sarah works very hard, and so do I, to keep a community up and running. But we greatly appreciate you all. We look forward to seeing you next week. Who knows what the topic will be? We don't.
This was determined at, I don't know, 10 to 9. So,
yep, exactly.
But it was a good topic. So, all right, everyone, check us out. If you don't know what we're about, I don't know why you'd be watching if you don't. But check us out if you don't know what we're about, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
1 2 1 2, need my attitude. 3 4 3 4, check my latitude.